Maybe it's a sea breeze, or the typical Mediterranean joie de vivre. Because the further you are from Jerusalem, the lighter, freer one tends to feel. Especially in Tel Aviv, the unabashedly liberal and hedonistic city of Israel. It's the final stop in our week-long visit to the country that is too often portrayed as a hotbed of intolerance and conflict. And maybe that's why Tel Aviv is called a bubble, like a separate country within the country. And in a way it is, because while the rest of Israel's cities trace their history back by thousands of years, Tel Aviv, established only in the early part of the last century, is a baby, the first new Jewish city in 2,000 years. A city built by the returning Jews of the diaspora from scratch, literally, on the sand dunes of a beach, which, incidentally, is the best place to start a tour of this sunny metropolis. Tel Aviv's 14-kilometer beachfront is like the city's backyard. It's where the local population congregates on weekends or at the end of each day. You can walk, bike, or in my case, rent a Segway and go from one end of Tel Aviv's coastline to the other, passing through its 13 public beaches along a scenic promenade that's uninterrupted by obstacles or cars. Though open to all, each beach attracts a certain type of crowd or lifestyle.
Right, Tel Aviv is known for its inclusivity. And we just passed the Gay Pride Beach or the Pride Beach. Over here is the Dog Beach. You guessed it, it's a beach where dogs can enjoy the sun and sand. Let's take a look.
Speaking of outfits, only modest beachwear is allowed on Nordau Beach, where Orthodox Jewish women are segregated from the men. But everywhere else is as liberal as a city can be, with an all-day party vibe that extends to the night.
I hear people say it, that Tel Aviv is like a different country altogether, vastly different from the rest of Israel. And I have to agree, at least in this part of the city, it feels more like Miami Beach.
Tel Aviv has the highest standard of quality of life in Israel, thanks in part to progressive city planning and urban regeneration programs that have transformed places like the Old Port into a vast leisure park.
Amazing, such a green, livable, and sustainable city. Well, that's Tel Aviv.
Of course, it helps that Tel Aviv was built without the baggage of history or religion, weighing down its vision of a modern international city. And that's what makes the city's eclectic architectural style so cool.
Remember that the vast majority of immigrants that settled in Tel Aviv in the first half of the 20th century were Jews from Europe, and they took with them their favorite architectural styles from the continent. This building behind me is a great example of Art Deco architecture. And if you're a big fan of modern architecture, Tel Aviv is a place for you.
Art Deco and Art Nouveau are well represented in Tel Aviv, but it's 1930s Bauhaus architecture that has come to define the city, built largely by European immigrants and funds from prominent Jews overseas.
Every great city has its grand boulevard. Paris has the Champs-Élysées, New York, Fifth Avenue. Here in Tel Aviv, it's Rothschild Avenue. It's named after the man, the tycoon, who helped build the city with his money.
In and around Rothschild Avenue are the best examples of Bauhaus in the city. and perhaps the world. The simple, functional, and affordable architectural type was ideal for immigrants in a rush to build quickly and relatively cheaply.
Beautiful, especially this one over here. And this one is being restored. There's a lot of restoration work going on with Tel Aviv's Bauhaus buildings. And that's because Tel Aviv takes great pride in being the one city in the world with the most number of Bauhaus buildings.
Unlike the Jews and Arabs that remained in the Holy Land for centuries, the new wave of immigrants that settled in Tel Aviv expressed their identity through their homes differently, with a heady mix of imagination, nostalgia, and kitsch.
This is one of the prettiest spots in Tel Aviv. Although it looks like a rural European village, it's not. It's actually right in the middle of the big city. This was built by Germans who moved to Israel. That's why it's called the German colony. And that's also why the architecture here looks more like it's from Western Europe than Western Israel.
Known among Jews as Sarona, the original village was established by German Templars, missionary Christian families who settled in the late 19th century in what was then an empty part of the country. The Templars have long disappeared, but their homes were carefully restored, and since 2006, they now form the nucleus of the most pleasant and family-friendly commercial development in Tel Aviv's central business district. The new Sarona Market Food Hall is a great place to understand just how global and cosmopolitan Tel Aviv's residents are. You'll find the cuisines of every major part of the world here, including the Middle East, of course, with most of the establishments free to flout the rules of kosher. For a more authentic and local taste of Tel Aviv, however, there's no better place than Carmel Market, the oldest and largest open-air market in the city. What locals call Shuk HaKarmel is rooted in the souks and bazaars of North Africa and the Middle East, from which most of the Jewish immigrants who sell their goods here are from originally.
Away from the elegant streets of Rothschild Avenue is Carmel Market. This is where you get to see a more multicultural side of Tel Aviv. You hear all sorts of languages here, including Filipino.
Skip the tacky souvenir section, with stuff probably made in China or India, and head straight to the fruit and vegetable stalls that sell fresh produce from farms all across Israel. Not to miss, fresh squeezed, healthy pomegranate juice, a local specialty. The food market is a riot of colors, sounds, textures, and smells that give you a taste of the original recipes and food cultures of both Jewish and non-Jewish immigrants. And journeys to places as far off as Mexico or Thailand.
It doesn't get more multicultural than this. You have non-kosher meat here, including pork and offal, stuff outlawed by the Bible, at least for those who follow it strictly. Well, proof again indeed that Tel Aviv is like a different country.
We've seen the destructive effect of religion elsewhere in Israel, but perhaps here in Tel Aviv, trade and commerce help keep the peace. Like any part of the region, there will always be threats to security, though here they're few and far between. Indeed, in Tel Aviv, you're more likely to be in danger of having a horrible hangover. When we return after the break, we spend our last day in Tel Aviv exploring its oldest quarter, and our last night in a wild club crawl in this hedonistic city.